After the collect for the day, after that prayer that has collected the prayers of the saints, we have our scripture lessons for the day, normally coming in the form of an Old Testament lesson, an epistle lesson, and a gospel lesson, to show, I believe, the unity of the scripture. There is a one-year lectionary that many churches follow, which is the same readings pop up every year on the same liturgical Sundays. Then there's a 3-year cycle. That's what we use at Bethlehem, so that the lessons are repeated every 3rd year. So we go through a good chunk of the scripture. It's not a law. There are times that I will go off of the 3-year lectionary to bring in some other scriptures. But I find it a very good tool to use, as it does capture a lot of what the Lord has spoken to us in his word. I especially like the Old Testament epistle and gospel setup, because the Old Testament is often ignored or not really viewed in the light of the New Testament. But you'll watch that Old Testament lesson will often mesh with the gospel lesson, especially that there will be a fulfillment in the New Testament of what was first spoken in the Old Testament. Makes it easier to preach on the gospel lesson because it is the fulfillment of what we read in the Old Testament lesson. And in between is an epistle lesson, sometimes themed in, but oftentimes we'll be kind of running through a book. Maybe we're looking at Colossians and we'll read something from chapter 1 and then chapter 2 and move through that book, giving us a full taste, if you will, of the Holy Scriptures. The 3-year lectionary is not intended to be your only scripture reading, and that's why I encourage you not only to come to worship and hear those lessons, but to pick up your scripture and to read what you get your own nose in your own Bible, if you will, and read more of the scripture. Read the stories and the narratives of the scripture. The readings usually take place at what we call the lectern, the place of teaching. Here is where we read the scriptures. Try to read very little other things from here, because the scripture is the heart and the soul of Lutheran worship. We try not to come with opinions and news from other places. This is the word of the Lord. And the people reply, "Thanks be to God."